Alrighty, folks. It seems like it is time. I've given a bit of time for folks to jump in. I'll keep watching my waiting room to let folks in as they arrive. But welcome to our December speaker series on the Christmas bird count in a very particular year, in a year with the midst of a pandemic. I'm Stephanie Pitt. I'm a member of the CFO board and the chair of the speaker series. We're very excited to invite, to have been able to get Geoff LeBaron to join us today. He is the National Audubon's director of the Christmas bird count program, and we will hear directly from the bird's mouth how to deal with a Christmas bird count during a pandemic. So let's get going. The first thing is I wanted to orient folks around the Zoom platform. Hopefully a lot of people are getting really comfortable with it at this point, but just in case, to point out some important features for you all. First, down here we have the mute button and then the stop video button. I would recommend as a listener that you simply mute yourself and turn off your video feed. That will help the presentation roll more smoothly and give you a little bit better capacity to stay along. It decreases the broadband width. The next thing.
Stephanie, advance the slide because it didn't advance.
You're not seeing it advancing?
I'm not seeing it advancing. I just see the welcome slide.
Okay, that's no good. Oh, Geoff, this might be the issue you ran into last time. Okay, let's try again then. Now do you see it?
Nope.
No.
Right.
It's nice to know I'm not alone.
Nope. I don't know why it's being silly. Okay, let's see.
You're not sharing at this point.
Yeah, I quit sharing. This one. Share. Okay, so you see my basic view, right?
Yeah.
Slideshow from beginning. Swap. Okay, we're on the welcome page. Now do you see my Zoom platform? Okay, great. Thanks, Geoff. I appreciate it. All right, so now that this is what you should be seeing, down here is your mute and your stop video buttons. So I advise all listeners to just mute so they can be incognito and they can turn off their video so they don't have to feel like they're on the stage. It's not your turn today to be on stage. The other thing is up here in this corner, I would recommend hitting speaker view. That way you're not seeing a gallery of different people, but you are seeing the active speaking individual on Zoom. Next, down here is the chat box. This is very helpful if you have any questions for Geoff. Please send them to everyone. And I'll move that actually out of the way. So here is the chat box. You can ask Geoff questions, so everyone, so that I can actually see them and I will read them off to Geoff at the end. If you're having any technical issues, you can also toggle that to button so that you can send it to CFO board, which is myself. And if you're having any technical issues, I can help you out with that. The next, and I think that's it. Yep. So that's orienting you around the Zoom platform. So if you have any issues, please feel free to use that chat box to reach out to me directly. Questions for Geoff go to everyone. All right, and now I will turn it over to the president of the Colorado Field Ornithologist Group, Nick Komar, to go over some of the important announcements that we have for this meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie. Before I introduce Geoff, can you hear me okay? Am I coming through okay? Okay, good. Before I introduce Geoff, I would like to go through some announcements from Colorado Field Ornithologists and also let you know how this agenda will go. So after Geoff speaks for about 15 or 20 minutes, we'll have an opportunity for questions for him. And then we'll have some time where compilers can take a minute or two and talk about their site, talk about their Christmas bird count and let people know what you're planning on doing, how if you need more people, et cetera, or if you're planning on canceling it, that sort of information. And there'll be an opportunity for people in the audience to ask you questions. So we'll get to that towards the end. Okay, to the announcements. Before I start, I would like to take a minute to remember two dearly beloved members of the Colorado birding community who we lost recently. Roger Linfield passed away November 9th. He and his wife Brenda participated in many CFO events. Brenda was a member of the board of directors of CFO for several years, I believe. And Joe Roller passed away November 25th. Joe was also on the board of directors of CFO and had been the president of DFO, Denver Field Ornithologist, I believe. Joe had a huge impact as a mentor to the Colorado birding community. And CFO would like to announce that we are establishing a Joe Roller Memorial Grant as part of our projects and grants program. That we award grants every year to the academic community. So one of those grants will be the Joe Roller Memorial Grant, and this is this will be funded through pledges to Scott Summershoe's Green Big Year in 2020 and 2021. So people may have heard that Scott Summershoe is doing a Green Big Year by bicycle this year. He's got 241 species observed so far in the Denver area. So he's going to be trying for 250. We need to support him in that. And people who want to pledge money to this grant can do so in the coming days. We don't have a mechanism yet.
One sec. I didn't get that.
Sorry, Siri is interrupting me. We don't yet have a mechanism to collect those pledges, but we will shortly. We'll make those known to the community through CoBirds. Okay, next slide, please. Also, I'll mention that December 18th is the deadline for applying for those grants if you're an academic. And
It's not advancing, Nick.
yeah, I see that. Here we go. Another development is that our journal, the next issue of our journal is about to come out. This is very exciting because this is the first issue with the new management team, editorial management team of this journal. Peter Burke is the managing editor. He's got a larger team than we've ever had before supporting him, including Georgia Doyle, George Mayfield, Luke George, and Monica Edgar. This issue will have a new regular feature called Birding by Ear by Eric DeFonso. It'll also have a report from the CFO Conservation Committee, which is a new committee just established this past year. So that's exciting. Okay, next. Oh yeah, so we haven't been able to do field trips in a while, and we haven't been able to hold our conventions, but we do have a big event coming up on May 8th, 2021. It's going to be our Colorado Birding Challenge. We tried to get this off the ground last year. We had to cancel it. This is going to be a competition event to raise money for conservation. So May 8th, that's also International Migratory Bird Day. It's also the eBird Global Big Day. But you can actually participate in all of those events and also participate in this event at the same time. It'll be teams will be formed to compete for finding the most birds in a 24-hour period, but each team has to work in only one county, and that there will be a handicap system so that you can work in a small county or a large county and still, it doesn't matter, you could still win the competition. So there will be several different categories to participate, including automobile, green category, which is like bicycling or canoeing or walking, no motorized vehicles. There's a youth category and a photo and audio category. So you can find out more information about that on our website. There's a link to this Colorado Birding Challenge on the CFO website, which is cobirds.org. So the registration portal is not yet open, but it will be shortly. And we look forward to having as many people participate in that as possible. And even if you don't want to compete, there are ways to participate without competing. So, okay, so, and I mentioned the convention. We won't be able to hold our annual convention in May of 2021. And we're not sure when the next one will be, but we'll be discussing that at our next board meeting in January. If things get better with the pandemic and the vaccine becomes available and we can get together in groups of larger than 5 people, then maybe we'll be able to hold a convention in the fall. We'll let you know about that later on, early next year. Okay, next slide, please.
So
Okay,
this,
back to you, Stephanie.
yeah, so I will actually take this over. We, as some of you have already heard about, if you attended some of our earlier speaker sessions, we received a very generous large donation of art pieces from John Moore last year. And with the conventions getting canceled, as well as not really being able to host some sort of in-person auctioning event, we are trying to offer some of these things to our member base on a virtual platform. And what's important about this donation and why we're trying so hard to get it out the door is because the conventions are critical to our fundraising for the research grants and scholarships programs that we run out of CFO. And every year we support at least 7 to 10 different Colorado researchers, and not just Colorado researchers. We even funded someone from British Columbia this past cycle that is examining birds across the entire migratory zone, but needed more data collection in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado region. So this program is extremely important in CFO's missions as far as advancing research, advancing knowledge about birds, as well as sometimes it has a conservation aspect to those programs and to the projects that we get. So because our fundraising sources for that are moot for at least a couple of years, we are trying to get creative in this new Zoom world. So we have put together on PBase a art gallery per se, where you can go and look at some of these beautiful, beautiful pieces that we have, and truly beautiful. I'm looking forward myself. If there was an auction, you know I would be bidding on some stuff myself, because there are some real prizes to have in your homes, or to gift to that special bird friend in your life. So the website link is pbase.com/cobirds. I will show it to you guys later. I can show you the interface, but we will have this open for 1 week. And remember, these purchases do go to research and some grants. The way that we'll do it is if you find something that you just can't live without, please email this special email, artsale@cobirds.com or .org, at artsale@cobirds.org. And that is where you will be able to arrange getting that item for yourself. And we will probably use the CFO website's payment platform that we already have set up as far as donations and membership payments and all that sort of thing. So it should hopefully streamline quite easily. And I pulled out some things that are nice and Christmassy, just in case you wanted to, up your bird-themed Christmas decor. I know that's a very big goal for some folks out there. And let me see if I can share the other screen. Over here. No, over here. This one. So if you plug in that pbase.com/cobirds, everyone seeing my website page here, you'll see these different gallery options that you can click into and find yourself a beautiful piece of art to have on your wall. And this is only a selection. We are believers that we will get to have an actual in-person event with all of you guys someday soon, not too long now. Okay, so back to this. Okay, hopefully it'll advance for me now that I've changed. Okay, did that advance? Good.
Yes, good.
Okay, so this is the other resource I wanted to point out to you quickly before we introduce our speaker for the night. This was found on the National Audubon website, and here's the link down below. It's quite easy to find if you go to the Audubon website and type in Christmas bird count, but I zoomed in on the Colorado area specifically so that you can see the status of the Christmas bird count circle closest to you. So some are either full or not open. Some might have some open with a little asterisk. Some might have contact your compiler and so on and so forth. And hopefully we have a few different compilers here with us today that can tell us more specifically about how their count is going to happen. I know of at least a couple in Colorado Springs and a couple on the North Front Range here as well. So stay tuned for after Geoff's talk to hear from the compilers themselves on their game plan for a pandemic bird count.
Actually, Stephanie, can I mention something before we leave that slide?
Yeah.
The colors have changed slightly from when we designed, or the meaning of the colors on the dots has changed slightly from when we designed the website. We used to have pre-registration available, which we can't do anymore. So functionally, the green and yellow dots are the same. It just means that they're open for new participants and contact the compiler. So
Okay.
I just wanted to
Perfect.
mention that.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. Perfect.
Okay, with that, I will introduce Geoff LeBaron, and I'm going to read to you a bio here. Geoff LeBaron is the Christmas Bird Count Director for the National Audubon Society, a position held since 1987. As an integral member of the Audubon Science Division, Geoff also works with the other community science projects, including Climate Watch, Hummingbirds at Home, and Great Backyard Bird Count, as well as ornithological and birding advisor on projects from the Conservation Science Team. Geoff earned his undergraduate degree in biology from the University of Miami in Florida and a master's degree in zoology from the University of Rhode Island. During his time at University of Rhode Island, he published his thesis, Kleptoparasitism as a Foraging Strategy in the Herring Gull, Larus argentatus. Before Audubon, Geoff served 5 years on staff in the ornithology department at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia, including collection manager at Vireo, ornithological field work on common loons for the Audubon Society of New Hampshire, ornithological field work for the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, and environmental education work for the state of Rhode Island. He has logged over 2,000 hours aerial observation time of marine mammals, turtles, and birds encompassing the entire east coast of the United States. And I learned that he and I grew up and became birders in neighboring towns in eastern Massachusetts. Okay, Geoff, it's all yours.
All righty. Well, thanks, Nick and Stephanie, for inviting me. I'm going to share screen here and hopefully we'll get going. So far, does this seem to be working? And Stephanie, yeah, okay. And we are advancing?
Yes.
Excellent. It worked. So I wanted to mention that actually after growing up in eastern Massachusetts, we moved to Albuquerque when I was 10 years old in 1964. And while we lived in Albuquerque, we actually needed a place to escape to get some green, and we ended up building a cabin in Blanco Basin in southwestern Colorado near Pagosa Springs. And I would heartily encourage anybody, I haven't been back there since 1984. There's wonderful birding to do in the area, especially if you can park somewhere and hike up to about the 10,000 foot level on the trails. If you want your Pacific wrens as breeders in Colorado, I would suggest going there because I know they at least used to be there. So whenever I've been talking to folks in Colorado, and a year ago, I was out talking to Denver Audubon, I'm trying to encourage people because I think it's a fairly underbirded area of the state. So that's my plug for birding the Blanco Basin area. So anyway, tonight we're supposed to be talking about Christmas count. And as most of you know, in the late 1800s, there was a growing awareness for the need for the conservation of wildlife. The millinery trade was decimating colonial water birds, and entire colonies were being destroyed annually for the millinery trade for women's hats and also just fashion in general. There was a growing awareness around the late 1800s and early 1900s that really wildlife needed to be conserved, not consumed. This is Frank Chapman in his later years. Probably about toward the time when he retired as editor of BirdLore in 1934. But in 1900, he had the advantage of publishing his own magazine called BirdLore. And what he proposed in late 1899 and early 1900 to all the people on BirdLore is to go out and do a Christmas bird, then he called it census, rather than a Christmas bird hunt. There had been a thing called the side hunt, where people would choose sides and shoot whatever they could, and whoever got the most feathered and critters won the competition. And his proposal was to count birds rather than shoot them. The amazing thing that he had the foresight to include into doing your Christmas bird census is not only to go out and count the birds, but also to keep track of the effort, the time and distance that you covered while you were actually out counting those birds. So the first year there were 25 Christmas bird counts done in Christmas Day of 1900, a total of 27 people. It was actually a continental count that first year. There were counts done from California to the East Coast and also one or two in Canada. In the ensuing 121 years, the Christmas bird count has grown to cover the entire Western Hemisphere, as well as a few of the US protectorate islands in the South Pacific. Generally, CBC data is only looking at the birds of the Americas, and especially of North America in terms of the long-term analysis. But we do include Saipan, Tinian, Rota, and Guam, because of course a lot of the shorebirds that breed in the high Arctic winter down in those areas. So if you ever want to have a kind of a fun vacation, you want to go to Rota to do a Christmas count, that's probably the most exotic one you could do. So this shows this is the map. This is sort of the zoomed out view of the map that Steph showed earlier. This is all the expected circles that we have right now, anticipating getting, or at least in a normal year that we would anticipate getting on the Christmas bird count. It goes all the way from the red one way down at the southern tip of South America is actually a count in the Drake Passage. And it goes up to the high Arctic and all the way out, like I said, from Bermuda and then out to the Western Pacific. So there's a lot of counts out there. This shows you the growth of the counts. As I said, it was 27 people in 25 locations in 1900. And next week, actually, the American Birds electronic newsletter will be emailed out. And I just this morning sent off my summary from last year. There were almost 82,000 observers last year, up from 27 in 1900, and 2,646 counts included, up from 25. So it's grown a little bit. Here's some of the facts and figures just from last year. Like I said, it was over 81,000 included in 25 countries in the Western Hemisphere. Same number of counts. There were over 42 million birds reported last year. Interestingly, that's the second lowest number of total birds that has been tallied on Christmas bird counts since I've been in charge of the CBC, which by the way is 33 years on Monday. On December 7th is my anniversary at Audubon. So something's going on with the numbers of birds, And this is one of the things that's, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. There's a lot of research that utilizes Christmas bird count data. Internally, we want to look at what really is happening with these numbers that are, they've been dwindling over the last several, I would say annually for the last decade or so. And you wonder, and the paper was published early last year about the 3 billion bird decline that people are seeing during migration. And I just have to wonder if this has something to do with that. But what we actually want to look at is what groups of birds are the ones that are representing, that seem to be having the biggest loss in numbers over time. So that's one of the next frontiers that we'll be looking at for Christmas bird count data. Anyway, last season, almost always the Matagorda Island, Mad Island Marsh, Texas count down in Texas is perennially has the high count for the United States, and last year it was 229 in terms of species total. They've had as many as 240 something. And the Yanayacu, Ecuador, which is high in the Andes, but has a tremendous altitudinal gradient in the count circle. They had 453 species of birds last year. They've had as many as 500. So if you want to get overwhelmed, go down to Ecuador and do a CBC down there. Interestingly, though, you will actually see a lot more birds on your Christmas bird count. I don't care where you are in Colorado. You won't see as many species, but you'll see more birds than you would if you go to Yanayacu, because the diversity is incredibly high down there, but the population level of any one species is very low. So most of those 453 species are tallied just by voice and by one individual, whereas you can go out and get 20,000 snow geese. What has been, in the 30 whatever years that I've been in charge of the CBC, one of the really most exciting things that has happened in my frame of mind is that the Christmas bird count has totally been accepted as a valuable resource by the scientific community. When we first started, it was only Audubon and the Patuxent Wildlife Research Center that manages the breeding bird survey that really felt there was valuable information to garner out of the Christmas bird count database. There's a total change now. The Christmas bird count is one of the two most important, or really the only two large-scale databases that we have to look at what's going on with birds across, especially North America, but increasingly the Americas. The other one, of course, is the breeding bird survey. So with the Christmas bird count, we have a snapshot of what's happening with birds in the winter, and with the breeding bird survey, it's what's happening with birds in the summer. And interestingly, when you look at trend data, and we'll go through, I'm going to show you the trend viewer in a bit. For the species that are tallied on both the Christmas bird count and the breeding bird survey, there's really good agreement in terms of the trends that we see. Of course, the breeding bird survey has a lot of birds that aren't generally supposed to be in North America during the CBC period, all the neotropical migrants. So most of the warblers, the tanagers, all that kind of stuff, they're down in South America. But what we get on the Christmas bird count that's completely missed in the breeding bird survey is a lot of the birds that breed in the boreal forest and up in the Arctic that move down into the primary body of Central and Southern North America. So, snow buntings, Lapland longspurs, all the stuff that we kind of look forward to finding every winter, those are completely missed in the breeding bird survey. So we get a subset of species on the Christmas bird count that we can actually look at stuff. Increasingly, the Christmas bird count has been used in all sorts of important reports on the status of birds, especially in North America. It's been used for years in various different state of the birds, including federal and local state of the birds reports. But in most recent, in 2006, we actually did the initial study of, let me go to the next one, since the Christmas bird count's the same people in the same areas counting the birds at the same time of year over time, we can really get a track of not only how many of those birds and what kind of trends are happening with the numbers of birds, but also how are birds changing their ranges over time. And the 2006 climate change report actually documented that a lot of species have shifted their ranges northward and also away from the coast as much as 200 miles in the last 60 years. And this is the center of abundance of where these species are. It's not the very northern edge or southern edge of where you might go to find a siskin. What it is, it's where would you go if you wanted to find the most siskins on average, or the most robins, or the most fox sparrows or pygmy nuthatches. And we were able to document exactly how species have been shifting their ranges in the early winter over the last 60 years in response to a changing climate. So the CBC was what we used to be able to document how birds are shifting their ranges over time as the environment changes. In 2014, we used those data to then do predictive modeling, essentially almost like a field guide to where the birds may be as we continue to see the climate changing. So we actually did predictive modeling and made a series of range maps about how our range is shifting over time. And this is one that's near and dear to lots of folks in Colorado. Here's what's likely to be happening with burrowing owls over the next 60 years. You can see this is where the climate suitability for these species are. It's not a range map like where would you go right now to see this bird. It's how are the environmental conditions that this species needs going to be shifting over time. And the blue areas are the wintering and the yellow areas are the breeding. So as you can see, it could be a bit challenging for burrowing owls if looking out toward the end of this century. One of the scariest ones is chestnut-collared longspurs. This and also Baird sparrow, it appears that unless they change their requirements for what they need to breed, there won't be the suitable environmental conditions available for them to breed in 50 to 80 years. So that's kind of creepy. So this was the first birds and climate change study that we did in 2014. And it was the Christmas bird count that was used to do the modeling for the winter data. And we used the BBC Breeding Bird Survey to do the summer ranges. There were a lot of things that we couldn't do, that we didn't include in some of the, we didn't include habitat structure and some other things that people gave us quite a bit of flack about, as you might imagine. So last year in 2019, we released the version 2 of the climate study, which we're calling Survival by Degrees. These are also, by the way, these, you can go to the Audubon website and find these things. This included a lot more data because we had a lot more data sets available to us, and also it brought in other things like sea level rise, more environmental variables other than precipitation and temperature. So it's a much more robust analysis of what is likely to be happening with species. And on the Survival by Degrees website, you can actually type in your zip code, and it will show you a list of the species that are likely to be in your state or in your area, and what their status is based on different climate change scenarios. So again, it was the Christmas bird count that allowed us to do these initial and current modeling ideas about what is likely to be happening with birds across the Americas. And on top of that, there's hundreds and hundreds of independent researchers across the world, really, that we get 5 to 10 requests per week for Christmas bird count data for them to look at in various analyses. And it's even places like in Europe, where obviously most of the birds that are included in the Christmas bird count aren't going to be over there, but the methodology and the kinds of shifting that the birds are doing over here is relevant to what's happening on other continents. So like I said, the Survival by Degrees website is really interactive. You can tailor it and you can look at the species in your area. And also there's a list of things that you can do to help address these species. So here's the famous satellite picture of where all the people are in the Americas, and it pretty well reflects where the Christmas bird counts are. So now what I want to do is I want to show you the trend viewer. Let's see. If I do that. Stephanie, are you seeing the website now? No?
Not yet. But you could do a new share.
New share, there we are. Okay, that's why. How about now? All right, here's the Christmas bird count website. This is the main page. Is it scrolling and everything? Okay, great. By the way, you can use that crazy complicated address at the web address at the top, or you can always remember just Christmas bird count, one word, no dots or spaces, christmasbirdcount.org. And that's that will always take you to the Christmas bird count website. You can go through Audubon, but sometimes the CBC, the level of what's where on the main Audubon website changes based on seasonality and stuff like that. And sometimes it can be hard to find the Christmas bird count. But if you type in christmasbirdcount.org in your search, it will always take you right to this page. So here's where compilers will go to enter their data. Here's the Christmas bird count results from 120 years of CBCs. But this is the kind of exciting thing that this is an updated version of the Christmas bird count trends viewer. And one of my friends and coworkers actually who's in Boulder, Tim Meehan, is the one who he actually develops these trend data every year. And we update this part of the website every single year with each season as it's finalized. So what you can do here is, once it loads, there's just an initial page with a little bit of instructions, but you can choose a species. What species? Well, everybody's muted, so I can't ask what species you want to look at. So let's look at Steller's jay, not eider. That probably isn't too relevant for Colorado. But what this does is it shows you immediately the data, including now the data from the 120th Christmas bird count over the last 70 years of how this species is doing in this instance, it's in states. And when you click on a region, it gives you a pop-up with how this bird is doing. This is the actual percent change. And this shows you the confidence interval around that number. So if these numbers are fairly low, that's a significant, that's a meaningful number. If the numbers vary all over the place, it's less important. So for Colorado, they're doing pretty well. But the other thing you can do if you're not as interested in looking at things by state, you can also look at different trend intervals here. This is 70 or 93 or just the last decade. But you can also look at what is happening in bird conservation regions. And this is still Steller's jay. So this is a little bit different breakdown. This is more based on habitat rather than state boundaries. So this is really more like what the birds are feeling in terms of where they are and not worrying about which state they're actually in at a given time. So there's a lot of things you can noodle around with here, and it graphically shows you what the trends are and the exact numbers are over here. This is again the confidence interval here. These will change as you go to different places. So here, actually, it is declining, but there's a lot of information here, and I didn't want to go through it too in depth. But if you are interested in how the birds are doing in your area, in Colorado or any place that you might be traveling, or a specific species, based on Christmas bird count trend data, there's a lot of information. And you can also, if you want to, if you're a data head and want to do this, you can actually download the data to your computer for the trends for these species. So all the data in the Christmas bird count are publicly available for download. And for huge inquiries like what we give to researchers, we have to pull the data just because you can't pull that much data from the website. It would take forever. So you can download subsets and do Excel spreadsheets and that kind of stuff. Or if somebody out there is interested in doing a large scale analysis, just send us a request and we'll pull the data for you. So that's the trend viewer. And the other thing then that I did want to sort of walk you through a little bit was that the COVID guidelines at this point, shifting gears to what we're going to have to try to deal with this year. So the COVID guidelines in the Christmas Bird Count website are in the compiler resources section, which is, there's all sorts of stuff in here available for compilers. But this is what we're interested in looking at just for the discussions after I stop talking. So our initial email that we sent out in September is here. Audubon is fully supportive of whatever compilers decide they need to do this year. If you need to cancel your count, that's totally fine. One season missing from a given count isn't going to make the data run from your CBC invalid. Missing just 1 year is because the count has been done for so long, and sometimes counts have to get canceled anyway because of weather or you know, sickness or whatever. Not pandemic sickness, but you know, if the compiler's sick, then you know, if something happens, then you just can't do the Christmas bird count. The weather changes the, you know, what happens every year. So there's so much variability built into the Christmas bird count that just losing one season, or if you have to run an understaffed count or can't get to all of your area, it's still going to be valuable data. So I wanted to say that Audubon fully supports all compilers in their decision to either cancel or continue with a COVID safe deadline. Not deadline, COVID safe Christmas count. Now we had set to wait until November 15th at the earliest to confirm the CBC. The reality is, what compilers will need to do is see what the state and local guidelines are basically just before you do your count, because those are the most important things. Audubon can't say, oh, you know, we're canceling the count or you can't do it. It's really more up to what the state and local guidelines are in terms of COVIDness. And I've been really worried about that because clearly there's a big uptick happening after Thanksgiving, and I don't know exactly what's going to be happening in the next 2 weeks before the count period starts. So for compilers, please do keep an eye on and be very careful about what the state and local guidelines are as you're planning on going into your count in, you know, a day or two at a time. For just the COVID safeness itself, we have to require that people cancel all in-person compilation gatherings. There's, again, a lot of this is the state and local guidelines. I'm here in Massachusetts now. Also, we have a curfew, a 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew for you're not supposed to be out at night now at this point. And also there were travel restrictions between states. If I normally do 2 counts in Rhode Island, theoretically, if I go do those counts and then come home, I will have to quarantine for 2 weeks when I come back into the state. So this is really going to affect the amount of participation and how much people can travel to do their Christmas bird counts. We would make sure that if you're basically we can't carpool this year, which isn't going to be, you know, great environmentally because there's more cars and more gas being consumed, but that's the necessary thing. You know, people that would normally sit together in a car and bird, like we really shouldn't be doing that. And when you are out in the field, we really do need you to try to make sure you're socially distanced, but keep your mask on. Just because birders get so excited about stuff. I do it myself, and you think you just forget about what we need to be doing to try to be COVID safe when you're out birding. So really, it's safest. I mean, yeah, sure, try to make sure you're 6 feet apart, but it's really better to wear the mask the whole time you're out there. So that's basically COVID land for this year. And I think I'm done. So I can stop sharing and Do you guys want to open it up for questions now, or do you want to move on into something else?
Absolutely. I got a couple of questions in the chat box for you already. Anybody else who has some questions that came up, go ahead and feel free to type them in there. We'll start with, let's see. I think the first thing, there was a comment from Keith Bruno that wanted to say to you, Geoff, that he remembers chatting with you and your forays into the Upper Blanco Basin a year or two ago on the CBC-related conversations. And he's actually the compiler out of Pagosa Springs and works on community naturalists for Audubon Rockies in PS as well. And he left his email address with you, which is just keith.bruno@audubon.org.
Yeah.
And
I know. I remember when you set up the Pagosa account recently, and that's really cool. I wish I could come do it.
Next year.
Yeah.
Or the next. Okay. So next we have from Diana Beatty. She's one of our board members as well. Does Europe have some sort of a version of the Christmas bird count?
There are Christmas bird counts that are done in other areas, but they're not submitted to the Audubon database. We're not set up to handle the birds of Europe in the database. There are, I know there have been counts done. There was a count done in, there's been at least 1 or 2 counts done in Africa. And I know sometimes people do Christmas bird counts or a Christmas bird count like activity when they're off and traveling, but those counts are not, probably at this point, they're eBird checklists.
Okay.
And that kind of thing. So there isn't an organized Christmas bird count type activity outside the Americas, except for, like I said, those South Pacific islands. But it is increasingly embraced in Latin America. Last week I gave a program for Colombia, the country of Colombia. They have they're behind the United States and Canada. Colombia and Mexico have the next level of number of Christmas bird counts in their countries. So about 100 circles in each of those countries, and we usually get 40 or 50 each year from each country. So.
Very cool. Yeah, it's nice to get the entire American picture.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay, so the next question is from Nick Komar, our president. So he says, I've heard some people say that with the advent of eBird, CBC data are now obsolete. From your presentation, it looks like that is not true. What is your short answer to that idea?
That is not true. eBird, I'm a total eBird supporter, don't get me wrong. And there are a lot of checklists that people submit during Christmas bird counts to eBird. But there's no Christmas bird count flag in eBird. And there are a lot of other checklists for a given day potentially within a count circle in eBird that aren't CBC data. And the key thing is the Christmas bird count is important and valuable, especially valuable because we know exactly the effort, the time, the hours and miles or hours at feeders that were included by official observers on the Christmas bird count to tally the birds that they submit. So eBird's a great tool. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful way of making some kind of an ornithological contribution whenever you're out birding. But it is not going to supplant, at least in the current way, eBird, because eBird can't handle pooled data, and the Christmas bird count is a pooled data set for a 15-mile diameter circle. eBird needs one route or one location at one time. So that's why the CBC database is so unique, really, is because it's looking at a larger blob over time than what other surveys do.
Awesome, perfect, thank you. Okay, Tammy Peebles has the next question. And it is how much of a data skew do you expect to have due to the pandemic preventing some people from participating when they normally would? And you covered this very well earlier.
Well, yeah, we won't know until it's all said and done how things go this year. But what we do know, in fact, when I was having a conversation with Tim up in Boulder about this, and he actually thinks that it might be very interesting, as long as things proceed the way we expect it, which is, my gut feeling is that maybe a quarter to a third of the counts will be canceled, and many of the rest of them will have to be run as reduced effort or coverage. But it could be really interesting to look at the data from this coming season and compare it to the other 120 years and see how much difference there is really in the kind of trend or, any of the data that we tend to look at. So it's going to be important no matter what, but I do expect that we will have a significant reduction in the amount of effort and probably a great increase in the amount of feeder watching time in the Christmas bird count over what we normally have, which in itself could be an interesting thing to look at analytically.
Yeah, and so are you going to try to statistically correct for that decreased effort somehow?
No, I don't think so. I'm not a statistician, but I don't think necessarily we would do that. It might be something that we would think about if the Christmas bird count hadn't been running for so long. So like for Climate Watch, the other program that we started, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, we had to cancel Climate Watch this spring. And in that instance, then yes, it might be important to try to look, statistically correct for whatever data that were submitted. But for the Christmas bird count, it could very well fall into the sort of ebb and flow and wobble of the Christmas bird count data this year. And it all really depends on just how things end up, which we won't know until January 5th.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have a follow-up talk from you in next year this time when we have, that your report put together to see what kind of effect happened there.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
It will. I do want to say the most important thing to me is I don't want people going out and getting sick because of doing their Christmas bird counts. That's the overarching most important thing in my mind. I had almost convinced myself that we should just probably cancel it this year, just because I've seen how challenging it is for birders and groups, and knowing how the social aspects of the Christmas bird count are as important as the ornithological aspects, and that's why it has continued and been so strong over the years. And that's what we have to shut off this year. And so I was very concerned about that, but that's my biggest worry, is that people are going to go out and kind of forget, and then suddenly, I don't want to see an uptick in Christmas, in COVID cases from Christmas bird count stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very wise, but people will still appreciate getting to go out birding, and
oh yeah,
I'm sure all of the compilers here on the call will encourage all of their participants to be extra careful and be cognizant and remember to be safe as a top priority.
Yeah. That's my goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Colorado will work hard on that.
Good. Thank you.
That is the end of our questions that we have in there. Thank you so very much for taking time out of your evening to come and talk to Colorado compilers and Christmas bird counters about the importance of this program, as well as how to do so safely this year. We will now take a chance to have a discussion with all the compilers, and I know a lot of people are not accepting any new counters to join their circles, but this might have opened a good opportunity to brainstorm together and get ideas from other compilers on how to manage following these rules, especially canceling the in-person compilation gatherings and how to get around that sort of thing and create social environments that are virtual so that we can still get some of that benefit out of this. So Geoff, thank you so very much. You're welcome to stick around and listen to the conversation, but you can also, if you, I know it's later for you out in Massachusetts, so we respect your time, and thank you so very much.
Well, you're entirely welcome, and thank you for inviting me. And I never get tired of talking about the Christmas count. So I think I will try to stay on just in case other questions come up, if that's all right.
Absolutely. You are definitely welcome.
I'll turn my camera off and I'll mute myself.
Okay. So
we'll start with Nick. Yeah. Do you want to start us off and be our example compiler?
Yes, I will. And I'll just first say that this recording will be available. That just came up on the chat. But just to give you, so I'm just going to take a minute to talk about the Fort Collins Christmas bird count. It is happening this year. It's going to be on Saturday, December 19th. Tom Hall is the compiler, but he was unable to get on the call tonight. So people can contact Tom after December 8th. But I'm the co-compiler of that count, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to share my screen and show you a tool we use for the compilation. We're actually going to hold the compilation right after the count, the same as always, but we're going to do it through a Zoom call, and we're going to compile all the group sightings onto an Excel file. And I can share this Excel file with other compilers if they want to adapt this Excel file to their particular account, but I'll just show you what it looks like. So I can share my screen now?
You should be able to, yep.
All right. Oh, let me see. Okay, share screen. Yes. Here we go. There we go. So you can see that, right?
Yes, I can.
Bottom line is in the A column, there's a list of species. It goes up to over 200 species that have, all the species that have ever been seen on the Fort Collins Christmas bird count, which has been going on for over 60 years. And then each of these columns here, A through Q, is a group that would report its sightings. So, so on the Zoom call, if I say, okay, snow goose, group A would report, and then group B would report, then group C would report. So let's say I put in a number here. I put in 1 for group A. Oops, what have I done? There we go. 1 there. Over on the right-hand side, on column S, the total number of birds 1 comes up and species 1 come up. So if group B has 2, then the total updates. So you get to see the total updating. And bottom line is, at the end of the night, you know exactly how many species were reported on the Christmas bird count. And you could also compare, so you can make these columns smaller or have fewer columns and put in prior year's data. So here's all the results from all of the previous years. This goes from, you can see, so you can scroll here. Well, there's a way to unhide that. This has the data from 2007 to 2019, and you can compare other years. So going back to 2020 data, this also tells us, so let's say group C sees 20 birds. So now we're at 23 total. It's still just 1 species for the species count in column T, but if you go over here, it shows you that 23 is a high count because the maximum count was 16. And that's 1 species that was a high count number, which sometimes people want to know how many high counts did you get on your count. So anyway, it's a useful tool. If anybody wants me to share with them, I certainly can. And it's possible also that CFO might be able to share our Zoom capability with you if you need that as well.
Yeah, so we can certainly coordinate because the counts happen on different days for different people. So if you need a platform and a virtual platform in which to host a meeting for this compiler gatherings, we could certainly offer that, our space here that we have for all of you to have a virtual space. So, you know, just reach out to bod@cobirds.org. and we can supply a virtual meeting room for you. So I don't have any fancy screen share other than the one we were on, which just kind of reminds those basic rules that Geoff presented to us for the Audubon. But I do have some compiler guidance on behalf of the compilers here in the Roaring Fork Valley, so in Glenwood Springs. So on behalf of Tom McConnell, we are not actually inviting new volunteers or many volunteers to the count this year, just because we have to reduce the quantity of people participating, which is an oddity for the year for sure. But the approach today is minimalist. We're requiring a minimum of about 6 people to cover the 8 geographic areas in the count. There can be a few more. Assuming 1 person per car, and some can cover 2 areas potentially, as much as possible without any contact between cars, and all correspondence will be by email is their plan. So sometimes email threads can get really long and things can get lost in that thread. So potentially, if that was your plan as well, using a Zoom space might be a good idea, or something that you didn't think of that you are now considering. Masks, of course, is completely required. There's no required carpooling or allowed of carpooling, but if folks want to go together that are from the same families or same households, then they may. For example, Tom's wife, Kay, will go with him, and others may have multiple vehicles at each of the sites. He doesn't plan on any compilation gathering, and they will not have their traditional lunch get-together. So a lot of just following those rules. We're not advertising to any volunteers this year for fear of getting too many folks. That is quite the new twist. And then that's about it. So, and they, I haven't had a chance yet to discuss with them the Zoom option, but I'm sure it might be an interesting one. And Nick, I definitely will request your excellent Excel spreadsheet. I think that's a really handy way to keep track of stuff.
Okay, Denise, did you want to talk about Loveland Christmas bird count?
Sure. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm not too experienced on Zoom stuff. I pretty much ditto what people have said, although in Loveland, we are strongly encouraging solo teams or household teams and not multiple teams at all. It's just like Geoff was talking about, you get out there birding and you get too excited, and it's really easy to forget to stay apart. So we are going to strongly encourage just one-person teams or household teams, or maybe COVID bubble teams if you've got that kind of situation. And we're probably going to split up our areas into smaller pieces so that hopefully we can cover a good part of our area. I'm sure people will choose not to participate. It's not going to be as much fun, but we'll see what we can do. And that it also assumes that our situation, if the dial swings further in Colorado or something, then I could see us canceling. But so far, we're still intending to have it on January 1st. Nick, do you have anything to add? Because since you're a compiler.
Yeah, so we'll also do the same Zoom compilation at the end of the day.
Right.
And Scott Rashid, did you want to say anything about Estes Park?
Yeah, we're going to be having the National Park Estes Park count on that Sunday, the 3rd of January. We don't tend to get that many people up here anyway, so I don't see that being any kind of an issue. But what my plan is at this point is I'll have the areas kind of blocked out on various maps, and then whoever wants to come in, whatever individuals. So far, I've only got 2 people that I know of, Sue Riff and then a woman who lives in Estes Park here that so far want to participate. So I don't expect a huge turnout simply because we seldom have a really big turnout. Last year we did well, but anyway, that's my plan, is to have the areas already kind of mapped out. Then when somebody emails me, I can just send them the map, and I know that section's counted. And at the end of the day or the next morning, they can just email me their tally and information. That's kind of the easiest. I think that's probably the easiest way to go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Nick, can I mention something that I just remembered?
Yes.
One thing that we need to remember when we go out is about, we shouldn't, make sure we don't share scopes.
Oh, yeah.
That's, it's, you know, yeah. So if people are going to use a scope or want to use a scope, they should bring their own.
Okay. Bill Schmoker, did you want to say anything about Boulder?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me, hey everybody. Geoff, just side note, thank you so much for being so responsive. We had a phantom count in 1982 that happened and was compiled and never got submitted back then, and it turned up, and Geoff entered that for us to fill in that gap. So thank you, and throughout the years, I've always appreciated everything you do, so thanks a lot.
You're entirely welcome, and thank you for all your help. Well, I mean, all the compilers, we wouldn't be here without you guys. So,
right on. You know, Boulder's interesting, along with a few others. We typically have huge participation, over 100 people. We've got 30 or more territories. So we, like all of you, have really reined it in. We're not canceling for now, but we're going for territory leaders only. Solo or with household. The thing I haven't heard mentioned that we are still encouraging is feeder watching. It's funny, even while we were having this meeting, I got another email coming in, an inquiry. So I've got just kind of a standard reply. Thank you so much. We're not doing the count as usual. Here's the feeder watcher form. We'd love you to do that if you can from your home or your yard. So we'll be a combination of solo leaders in the territories they've done before. A few of those even may have experienced participants that they can send off on their own, but like you say, they're not going to get there together. They're not going to bird together. They're just going to chop it up and go solo. So got a few open territories. I suspect that's just how it's going to be this year. We'll do the best we can with solo leaders and feeder watchers.
So Bill, we do have from Chris McAllister, if you could share that feeder form, the feeder watcher form. If you send it to the bod@cobirds.org, I can send it off to the compiler list of Colorado.
All right, I think I can put a link in the chat as well, which I'll do here, but you got it, Chris.
That works too. Okay. We do have a comment from Amy Servine. I think I'm saying that right. You could also use and set up a shared Google sheet for a count area, and each person could enter their own data as a suggestion of how to compile that data.
Yeah, I forgot that part. We've always had kind of a smattering of, some people still write out their stuff and mail it to me. A lot of people, though, I have a spreadsheet. It looks somewhat like Nick's, and people submit that electronically. So we'll do a Zoom type compilation, but not the day of. Haven't decided on the day yet. Probably like a week later, something like that. Just with at least initial results.
Nice, perfect. Keith
Sally?
Bruno also wanted to mention that anyone is welcome to join his count in Pagosa Springs. Again, his email is keith.bruno@audubon.org.
Keith, would you like to say anything?
Keith, would you like to pitch in, or would you like me to keep reading for you? I'll take that as a reading. So they're breaking into 8 zones and multiple small subzones that have specific family nuclei. So they're kind of spreading out the wealth, I guess. Same rules as shared by Megan, no carpooling, encouraging folks to bird in their neighborhoods and collect information at feeders. And if you do want to join, it's Saturday, December 19th.
Yeah, Megan, thank you. I'm right here, but yeah, you covered the bases there. Thanks for reading for me.
Okay,
Nice to meet
perfect.
you all.
Yeah.
So Keith, I'll ask you a question. What are you planning on doing for the compilation?
We haven't, I'm kind of the same boat as Bill in terms of, we still haven't kind of firmed up all the details on that. So I think it's wise maybe to give a little bit more time, knowing that data sheets do roll in so many different forms. So I'm taking notes from Bill in terms of not trying to be ambitious and do it the night of. So punt that down a few days. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so how about we do Diana next for Fountain Creek, and Tyler Stewart can follow her.
Hi, so Fountain Creek, we have about 24 people covering the circle. We have 9 regions with, anywhere from about 1 to 4 people divided up to cover each of those regions. We aren't really taking any new volunteers at this point, except for feeder watchers. The other people, they're all mostly people who've done it before for several years. The way I gather data is I created an eBird account for the Fountain Circle 2 or 3 years ago. And so all of the people in the different regions, they share checklists of all the places that they bird. And then I go through that data and I put it in a spreadsheet very much like Nick's, and then I send out the results to everybody. We're not going to have a compilation. We don't always have one anyway, but we're not going to have one this year. So with the eBird account, I might be going in and putting in some historical data. I haven't done that yet, but I can put in all the previous years in there as well. Just not quite as specific into terms of areas to where the data was gathered though. So I'm still thinking about that one. I don't know if there's really a whole lot else to say. I think that's it.
Thank you, Diana. We'll take Tyler Stewart next.
Hey there. I'm the compiler for Colorado Springs, and we regularly have between about 120 and 160 people spread across 30 areas or so. So figuring out logistics of this year has been tricky. A lot of those people are associated with a couple different friends groups, and they have lunches to go along with it, and that's obviously not happening this year. So I'm expecting we'll have quite a few less that just don't show up with those friends groups, but I've asked all the area leaders to divide their normal division of teams into even smaller groups. We're following everything that National has provided, making sure we're up on state and local regulations. And I think the only other thing that I would offer that I haven't heard brought up tonight is that I've reached out to area leaders to make a pitch on Nextdoor, those area leaders that are within the circle, to try to encourage more feeder watching.
Yeah, so we'll definitely make sure to email out that form to my list of compilers. That way, if you want to try and encourage that more in your own circles too, we can try to use that form as a methodology. Thank you so much, Tyler. The last name I saw in the chat box was Sally Waterhouse. If you want to take it away.
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Can you see me?
I can.
Right. I can't see myself. I'm not sure I have anything else to add. We're doing pretty much what other folks are doing. We're not having any new people come in. The slot account usually has 25 to 30 people involved. We're having 20 involved this year. And in order to allow that many people to participate, I subdivided some of our areas into some walking areas so that they would not need to carpool and they could just walk. And again, it's just 2 people. And if they are not related, not in the same pod, they have been strongly advised to mask and so forth. And we all know each other here. So I'm confident of that. We normally do a luncheon. That's not happening. And again, like other people said, I get data in various ways. I have my own spreadsheet. It works out pretty well. So, but I actually think that I don't know if Geoff is still on there or not. I think at least the way we have subdivided things and the walkers that will be involved, I think we'll actually have more intensive look at some areas that we don't always have because of just the amount of time it takes to cover some of our whole areas with a small group of people.
I think that's entirely possible, Sally. And I mean, it's another one of the things that'll be really interesting to look at the results and see how the effort data might shift. So it's all going to be really interesting to see how it works.
For sure, for sure. And again, my thanks to you as well, Geoff. I was in on the compilers Zoom with you earlier, and it's just been really helpful, really interesting. Passed on that information.
Good. Glad to help.
I did hear from Bill Kempfer that the Flagler count is canceled, and from Joey Kellner that the Chatfield count is canceled. And I do know that the rawhide count up by the Wyoming border is scheduled for, I think it's for January 2nd. Anybody else on the line who wants to announce a count that's happening and tell us what you're doing?
I believe
Hi, this is Gary. Can you hear me? Gary Lefko?
Yeah, we can hear you, Gary.
I'm on the phone only, so I'm not in the Zoom app. That's why you don't see me. So far, all 4 of our Christmas bird counts that cover the entirety of the Pawnee are on. I think I have more than enough people right now, but if you know someone really wants to do it, let me know, and I'll figure out where we could put you on which one of the 4. And we're doing what most other CBCs are doing, solo birding for each section or with your family members. I'm curious, I think I heard one group mention that they're allowing or might be allowing like a nuclear social bubble, like someone and their best friend. I just have that question out there for the group. And then the other question I have for the group and or Geoff is anyone doing liability waivers in general in the past or considering them for COVID?
In terms of from Audubon, that isn't something that we've been, well, actually we can do because National Audubon doesn't have any legal authority over anything that anybody does on a Christmas bird count. It's all volunteer. So we haven't, that's certainly not something that we've thought about.
Does anyone on the local CBCs in Colorado ever do waivers or not?
No.
I know for some chapter run in in other states, I don't know about in Colorado, but I know that for some like or bird club, if an organization or a club or a chapter is officially the organizer of the count and they have an insurance policy or legal policy that would cover people doing their officially sanctioned field trips, then sometimes groups like that do on a national level. Like I said, I don't know how what the specifics are there in Colorado.
Okay, and the other question was people's thoughts on a nuclear social group, meaning can someone come with their best friend or whatever?
The term that I've heard used generally, and I know people have mentioned here tonight, is a pod, and a pod isn't necessarily strictly family members, but if you have a group of close friends that you spend time with anyway, and essentially from COVID standpoint have become family members because you're exposed to the same things, then I suppose that would be fine. It really becomes the same as a family group. But we wouldn't want people coming together that haven't been generally, you know, sharing the same exposures over the last months.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, there are a lot of COVID exit buddy groups out there for sure to, you know, maintain some sense of sanity. I think also being sure to stay masked up and still try to maintain distance to some extent can still be applied even if you are in these pods and not necessarily just directly only members of your household, but within these pods that do already have links between those individuals, then, you know, a mask still doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so the last thing I'll say about the Pawnee Christmas bird counts is, of course, the Pawnee is very expansive and rural. So typically what we see on our counts is probably less than 20 people. And generally, some of the areas you venture into, you're probably going to see 3 or 4 species, and that's about it. You see a lot of birds, but you might only see 3 or 4 species, and you'll probably never run into another car. So
that's true.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think Diana had a comment on your waiver question. Diana?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right.
There was a comment just before Jeff's. Was it Chris McAllister? Did
Yes.
you want to say something?
Chris,
Yes,
if you're
hello,
on the
good.
line, take it away.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Yes, so I'm representing Northern Jeffco, and we are just in our second year, so we're a pretty small group. We do plan on continuing the bird count. It will probably be mostly individuals, and I love the feeder watchers. We have a lot of private property in our circle, so there's 8 zones, and it'll likely be, you know, just 1 or 2 people probably per zone. You know, maybe some family members. I know there's a couple couples that do bird together, but other than that, it'll mostly be individuals. And I'm the zone leader for one of the zones and looking just to kind of assign the people that we have that have expressed interest, just separate areas within the zone.
Perfect. And then John Shinot, if you wanted to take it away. I think that's the last of the compilers that have pitched in the chat.
I didn't have anything to say about a CBC. I was only mentioning that while Fort Collins Audubon Society promotes these, we don't view ourselves as having any official responsibility for them. And I can't speak for any other local chapters, but I can speak for Fort Collins as chapter president.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. And then Arden says he will talk to the, he'd like to speak about the Gunnison count. So Arden, you can take it away.
Hi, folks. We will be holding a count in Gunnison this year on Sunday, December 20th. Normally we get about 15 or 20 folks joining us, but this year we're just going to take the count leader or the sector leaders that I've used in the past. They're familiar with their areas and they'll be birding solo in the area like a lot of other folks are doing. So we'll probably only have about 40% of our normal effort out there, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm hoping we'll get probably 80% of what we normally get in the way of data. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that we can do a reasonable result with less effort this year. We'll meet for 5 minutes in the morning outside to share count sheets and maps, and then we won't have our traditional chili potluck in the evening to compile. Instead, I'll have them deliver their data back and I'll compile it by hand. I have sent an email out to the other volunteers that typically help us, asking them to keep track of feeders and also count week data and email that in to me as they find it. That's about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Arden. That is everyone that was here as a compiler. Thank you all so much for coming and sharing ideas and sharing your game plans. I will make sure to email you all the Feeder Watch form in case you wanted to use that as well and promote it out to your groups as well, or if you get contacted as the counts are getting closer. Geoff, once again, thank you so very much. This has been very helpful for all of us and very informative. There's several thank you comments out there. And I think with that, that's the end. That's the conclusion of this speaker series. Thank you guys all so much. It's been a wonderful evening. Have a fun count, even if it's less social and less big than usual. And hopefully there's just 1 year of this.
That's for sure. Thank you, everybody, and I'm glad I could do this. So have a safe count.
Thank you so much. And with that, good night, everyone.
All right, good night.
Good night.